Welcome to the next installment of season 2 of the Off the Tools podcast. How are we all doing? Welcome, Andy. How are you, mate?
Good, man. Good. Feeling the cold.
Yeah. So we're recording this in early December 2025. It's quite cold, especially Andy being up north. Us southerners don't get it as bad, but Andy being a northern monkey gets the weather a bit more than us. Kicking off with controversy, the north and south divide, but hey ho. So today we're talking about scaling a trades business. So again, not every tradesperson or business owner wants to scale a business, but if you're here watching and listening, my guess is that it's on the cards for something that you maybe want to do now or in the future. And when it comes to scaling, obviously everything we've already spoke about in previous episodes, systems, AI, marketing, are all part of that journey. So today is going to be a little bit more about the more practical side of it. You know, you can't scale a business without taking on somebody else, you know, whether it be an office person, whether it be an engineer. And with that comes costs, obviously, and salaries, and obviously knowing what is a competitive salary to offer someone is a very big part in scaling. So I wanted to start there because I believe that there's a lot to discuss around that. What's your thoughts, Andy?
So we spoke in the previous episode about how the back end software and the back end staff allows you to charge a rate that's truer to what we're worth, let's call it. But we wanted to touch on this, and like you say, there's a lot of guys that say they don't want more engineers. However, what's a very common theme in the group, and people quickly realize, is once you start to invest in your business, whether it's software or admin, VA, systems, things like that, or getting coaching and things, you'll realize that there isn't enough time in the day, basically. So you kind of need the extra engineer to generate the right amount of revenue. But what you'll then, there's kind of an intrinsic sort of knock-on effect, isn't it? Because when the lads start working with us, then they realize they haven't been charging enough, so they elevate the prices. They then quickly realize, well, actually, because my prices are right now, if I take on a number of staff, these numbers will actually work. You know, we spoke on the last episode about guys, when they're on their own, they should realistically be making 100 grand a year because of the hours that they work and the risks and all the other things associated with it. The guys that are only making, let's say, 50, who then end up reaching capacity, when they try and take someone on, this is usually the horror stories that you hear on the forums, isn't it? I've tried to take on staff and it never worked. Yeah. And that's usually because you're not charging enough, isn't it? If you're not charging enough, you get someone out in the field. Well, then when you look at the numbers, they're costing me X amount per year, but they're only bringing in X amount. I'm better off on my own. Yeah. That was something I noticed when I first started on the development journey of it. The common scenario was, I make the same money on my own, and they're the guys that generally get someone else on just to fill the diary. So sorry to take over a bit. I'm just getting a little bit of the base of the conversation set up in that. Some guys might listen to this and go, oh, no, I don't want staff. It's too much of a headache. But again, if your numbers are right, then staff will work. Staff in the field will work for sure.
100%. And if you're one of those people that have said that statement, oh, I can make more money on my own, fundamentally, that's because you've done something wrong, isn't it? You know, that like simple equation. You know, if you've added hours that are now billable through a member of staff and you're not making more money, then fundamentally something's wrong with the pricing and the infrastructure, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. As I say, so many guys end up really busy because their prices are low. We've said before, word of mouth travels faster through someone who's cheap. Use that guy because he's cheap. He's a nice guy. Faster than it does through pure quality, or you might get really good reviews from having good office staff. But when it comes to a word of mouth type business, that's usually faster through price. And they're the guys that then end up, as I say, at capacity, but charging those cheap prices. So they end up in that position. And a lot of lads that come to us are like that, aren't they? I'm overwhelmed. I'm using, all my days are full. I'm just not making enough money, but all my days are full. And when they're at that point, most of them don't really see taking on more engineers as an option, let alone it being the solution to that problem. As you just said, if your pricing's right, then the leverage that you get from more engineers out in the field is the solution to the problem that you have, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So what are some of the things that need to be considered when you're trying to work out what to pay someone and what things need to be factored in? Because obviously you need to know, the people need to know down to the smallest detail, don't they, what it's actually costing to put an engineer out on the road.
Yeah, so I normally ballpark it, the lads that we've got in the group. Let's say, again, we'll use heating and electrics just because obviously it is one of the more expensive businesses to run, as well as one of the more expensive businesses to hire field staff for because of the extra qualifications that they need. But if you budget around 100 grand per year to put someone out in a van, that might seem like a lot, and people will be like, sure, someone probably fell off the chair listening to that. But salary, van, specialist tools. I know people normally bring their own hand tools, but you're going to need specialist tools. So again, for example, gas, you're going to supply a flue gas analyzer. So there's £1.50.
Core drills,
things like that.
wet hookers,
core drill, things testing, like that. Your insurance, so your liability insurance and things like that. Then you've got your pension. Obviously what some people miss with the salary is the PAYE contributions as well, and then sick days, holiday days, things like that. So
I call them phantom costs, which is something that a lot of people don't know what that is, and it's a really important point. So sorry to jump in there. I just wanted to double down on that a little bit, but it's not easy, but it's sort of fairly obvious to cover, obviously, the initial salary, pension contributions, NI contributions. But when you start actually diving in, there are a lot more hidden costs, phantom costs, things like sick days, training days, jobs overrunning. Life isn't perfect. There's always going to be these situations that crop up. And if you don't factor that into your costings, then ultimately you're the one footing the bill for that, which is why you see so many people say it's not worth it. I don't make enough money from this person. It's because they haven't factored in all of these bits and bobs, like realistically, unless you're buying brand new vans, you've got to put some money aside because the clutch is going to go, or it's going to need 3-4 new tires over a course of a year or two. It's going to need all of this stuff, isn't it?
That napping at any point, you could drive the van off the forecourt and drive over a nail.
Yeah.
I mean, first job.
And why should that? This is what really annoys me about trades businesses, right? And sorry to rant here, but this is what it really frustrates me, right? So let's use McDonald's as an example, probably one of the most successful businesses in the world, right? They will know how long a fryer will last them. Yeah. And they will factor in the replacement costs of that fryer as an example. Yeah. So let's say it's 10 grand for a new fryer and they need to get a new fryer every, say, 5 years, right? That 10 grand is layered in to the cost of what it costs to run that business. So that at the point that fryer needs replacing, their business has paid for it, not the owner, not the franchise owner. He's not taking a 10 grand loan out to buy that fryer. That's been factored in to the cost of your Big Mac meal, and whatever. And we need to be doing that, even though we're obviously on a lot smaller scale. If anything, it's more important because we haven't got, or a lot of people won't have, a huge pot to call on if they're not prepared for it. So going through those phantom costs, is so important, and you've got to, overestimate that. I believe, you've got to, you don't want to be left in a position where the van breaks and it's a gearbox. I've just had a gearbox on one of mine, and it cost me, I think it was about $3.5 grand. Right? If I hadn't have had a pot for van repairs building up over the last couple of years, I would have had to fund that, or I'd have had to find the money out of the business that weren't expected. Whereas by planning and knowing that that's what it costs, so that's why I charge 130, 140 pound a job, because all of these little phantom costs might crop up. And even things like, hand on heart, everyone watching this, right? We've fucked someone's carpet, or we've burnt a skirting board, or we've drilled a hole through an electric cable, or whatever it might be. We might all sit there and think, oh, shit don't stink, but it does. These are all phantom costs that, yes, we don't want them to happen, and they might not always happen, but they're going to. Stuff is going to happen, isn't it?
This is why, again, so many lads fail or never quite reach the level that they want. And I was in a bit of an interaction on one of the forums with this the other day, to the guys that are out there charging 60, 70 quid. There just isn't enough contingency in place for things like that. And it can absolutely ruin them. Like you've used McDonald's as an example. I like to use a car garage where you're going to take your car to get it serviced. They can lock in the costs of the ramp and things like that because you're taking the vehicle to them. Okay, yeah, there's some mobile guys, but ultimately they're usually charging a much greater hourly rate than a trades lad would charge. Yet you're taking your vehicle to them, and people say, "Oh, you got premises costs." Well, your van is your premises for all intensive purposes, and you need to charge that. And so many guys, that conversation went a little bit deeper to, like, you was bang on there using the McDonald's fryer as an example. I was using a flue gas analyzer as an example, or some new tools. Like, how many lads to say, "Oh, it's got this new drill, it's banging, look at this." Oh, it makes light work of anything. I would argue 99% of lads, whether it's a new flue gas analyzer, a new core drill or whatever, will not relay those costs back to customers.
Yeah,
because it's a treat, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I treated myself to. That's usually the terminology people use. It's, I've treated myself to a new drill, or I've treated myself to a new flue gas analyzer, and very much a viewing of this is my stuff. And it's the same with the van, isn't it? I'm treating myself to a new van, and those costs don't get relayed. And the lads that are still charging 65, 70 quid an hour, they're just. Those costs, they're like you say, they're taking on those costs themselves. They buy a new drill. If they don't factor, okay, well, this is going to last, like you've said, this is going to last me 5 years. It's cost this amount of money. Therefore, I need to spread the cost of this across my customers for the next 5 years. Just like McDonald's do, like you used the example of.
Yeah.
I would argue 99% of lads don't do that. Same with the van.
No.
They will just see the van as a personal thing.
The budget that come out last week, I saw a debate happening in one of the forums. I think it was Plum Chat, and someone put like, "Oh, are you passing on that 2% corporation tax rise that's come in?" And the fact that it had to be asked, to me, sums up the mindset. If the costs have gone up, if the price of oil goes up, guess what? BP put the price of petrol up because the raw costs have gone up. So if at any point, like if there's inflation, if it's a rise in taxes, if it's a rise in material costs, it has to be layered on top, because otherwise you're going to go to work and earn less money today than you did yesterday. And I'm not being funny. No one wants to be doing that. Maybe a year, next year to last year, whatever. So to sort of come back to the topic, because we're going deep on pricing again here, but I want to focus this around scaling, and obviously the pricing is always going to come up because it's a fundamental, it's the lifeblood, it's the oxygen of the business, isn't it? If the pricing is wrong, let's get it back to scaling, right? So you're saying about 100 grand a year per engineer. That's covering all the pensions, the salaries, the van costs, the tool costs. Yeah. So obviously areas change, areas and industries are different. So you're using this as a heating engineer business in your area. So you can't take Andy's numbers that he said there as like your true numbers. You have to put the work in and work it out yourself. But we're giving some ballparks just to sort of give you a bit of a reality check, I guess, isn't it, of the amount more than the salary, because you're not paying the engineer 100 grand, are you? You know?
No. So you're going to be looking at again, heating and electrics between 40 and 50 grand ballpark, depending on, like I say, your area and the hours that they're working. Again, you need to be paying at least that. If you're trying to get an engineer on board and pay them 30 grand, then it's not fair. They're not going to be happy with it. 40 and 50 grand just straight base salary. Then obviously you've got the more, let's see, the next obvious cost is going to be the van, the insurance of the van, the maintenance of the van, and then I would say next in line specialist tools, and then your associated insurances, and then your add-on costs to the salary, so your pension, your PAYE contributions, and then as you coined it, the phantom costs then as well. And that's how it can then stack up. But again, I didn't say that 100 grand to scare people, to think, for them people to think, oh, I'm never going to be able to take someone on. I'm not even making that myself. It's more, again, just to, as an extension of what you were saying about the annual price increases with things like inflation and budget changes. It just kind of hammers home the importance of annual price increases, or price increases whenever there's something changes. Like you say, if the price of oil rockets overnight, you need to up your prices because it's costing you more. You know what I mean? The garage doing your car maintenance doesn't need to worry about that individual metric for fuel. Maybe they do if they're supplying the oil, for example, but bad analogy. But if this is again such a bone of contention, and why so many lads, when they come through to us who've held on to their pricing for years, who say, I'd love to take on another engineer, but I can't, I'm just not making enough money. They're usually so far behind that it's going to take a while for them to get it back to where it should be, or up to where it should be, before they can then think about taking someone on. Because if you are 60, 70 pounds an hour, you're not going to be able to take someone on.
No. So just for a bit of clarity on that, right? I think the 100 grand is a bit extreme, personally. I think it's nearer 80 to 90 for a heating business. That said, it's better to be overestimating than not. But to break that down, right? So let's go on the more conservative. Let's be a bit more like, okay, it's not going to cost as much as that's the wrong word, optimistic. Let's go on the optimistic side. And say it's 80 grand, right? Let's just use that number just to start with. If I break that number down to a day rate, right, that means it's roughly £310 a day. Okay, that engineer is going to cost you on the road. When you're charging 60 or 70 quid, that is why you're not making money, because they're going to bill, say, 5 hours a day, and there's going to be hardly any, if any, profit left in that. When your pricing is strong and you're 100, 120, 130, whatever it is that you are, that's when you can start to actually make money, because the illusion is that you can bill 8 hours a day. If you're doing day rates, then obviously, yes, you obviously factor that in. But for most heating engineers, plumbers, electricians, we're doing reactive work, 1, 2, 3 hour jobs. It's not day rate. So I want to say the 310, if you can't double that, so let's say 620 quid for a day, then you need to take a look at what type of work you're doing, the pricing that you're doing, because if 600 quid is 6 billable hours at £100, isn't it? Yeah. So on average, you should be aiming for 5 to 6 billable hours if you are jobbing around, because you've got to allow a bit of travel, some problems to come up during the day, etc. So if the pricing is right, you can make some serious money on an engineer. But why do so many people not? Everything we spoke about is why, isn't it? I've sort of self-answered my own question there.
Yeah. Most guys are 60 quid. That's going to be the break-even point, versus the guys that are 120. Then they are making the doubling up on that. Yeah. Okay, there's some cost with it, but it's the guys that are 60, 70 quid. When they look at what they can generate from another engineer, then it becomes pointless, then, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, they're going to be just, to coin the phrase, self-serving. If you know what I mean, if it's costing you 300 quid a day to put them out on the road, and they're bringing in 300 quid, well, what's the point? And that's the guys.
Even if they're bringing 400 quid in, what's the point? It needs to be worthwhile. You shouldn't be just taking an engineer on to keep your customers happy. Yeah. And I know that might be controversial, because obviously we need to keep customers happy. But if you're going to have the responsibility, if you're going to have the stress and the effort and the emotion that running a business drives, you need to be making proper money on them. Making a few hundred quid over the week on someone isn't enough to justify scaling a business, because with taking on staff, there are other complications, aren't there? Your job role changes. You're now responsible for someone else's mortgage or rent. Someone else's life is now sort of relying on you as the business owner, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, in the headspace as well. And like you say, your role will change. There'll be other things that you need to spend some of your time doing. But to get back on track a little bit, if everything's dialed in, then there is some strong money to be made, or some strong growth to be made, depending on how you want to play it. If you want to build a strong business in your area, a stable one that is going to last the test of time, and it's the only way to do it, because you on your own is not enough. How many lads do we have coming in who are trying to think about the future, and when it's just them, they're like, shit, well, I don't have a pension or a retirement pot. It's just me. I've got nothing. What can I do with it when I reach 65, 70? What are my options? Well, when it's just them, nothing. Yeah. If there's structured business to it, even if it is just a small one with a couple of lads and a girl in the office, that can be sold, whether it to be a local guy or whatever, or can be passed on. There's something there. But when it's entirely reliant on you, everything's running through you. You're answering the phone, you're booking the job in, you're going out doing the job, everything's on you, then you don't really have a business, in my opinion. Controversial statement. You know what I mean? Most guys who it's just them on their own, they will say they've got their own business. I would challenge that phrase and say that you're self-employed. To me, a business is something tangible that can, in part at least, run without you, or can be a tangible value can be given to it. And that is the way to do that. As I say, it doesn't need to be big. It could be just a couple of lads and a girl in the office, realistically.
Yeah. So let's hypothetically, right? Someone on the other end of this, watching and listening, say they take the time to do this work. They put the effort in. They work out all the costings. Little plug: everybody now has complete free access to my pricing calculator. So make sure you go on the Off the Tools website, which is offthetools.co.uk, and then there's a resources tab. You can go in there, get access to the pricing calculator completely free, which will help you understand these numbers. It will guide you through step by step, putting the numbers in so that you come out with the correct amount of money that you need to be charging. So let's say hypothetically, Dave down the road has took the time, he's done that, and he's got the right costings in place. when it comes to scaling the next steps after that, so I'd call them the foundations. You need to make sure all those foundations are right. What's next when it comes to scaling up?
I mean, we've covered software side of things, but realistically, trying to think of the right order you would look at this, really. So, yeah. So again, if anyone who's thinking about scaling, or I would say intrinsic, is trying to start to make more money or some proper money and make what they are worth, you need to look at the pricing first. But the reality is you're going to need to scale. You're not going to be able to make enough money on your own. That's the reality of it. But we're in such a time now where people who put that effort in are going to be rewarded. The guys that are just content with being on their own, charging the 60 quid, unfortunately, they're going to get priced out of the market by their own doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like you say, the budget, that was a really interesting post on that forum the other day about guys. Oh yeah, I've not put my pricing up for a few years. I could do with putting it up next year. We're worth 65 quid. We're going to put it up to 70. And the pricing calculator for them is going to be phenomenal, because if they spend the time with it, they'll realize that they're not making anywhere near what they're worth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
it's like
I would see the next problem, again, just from experience of like working with people over the years, is it's that actual action of taking the risk. People seem to think that being in business, there shouldn't be any risks, but you can't fill 2 buckets of water up unless you've got 2 buckets. Yeah. So at some point you've got to go, okay, I'm busy, the pricing's right, you know, and you've got to take that risk of taking the same risk as when you started on your own. When you started on your own, most people wouldn't have had a year's worth of work booked in, would they? You know, they might have had a few private jobs and whatever, and they took that gamble to leave that security and go and become that self-employed and start on their own. And you've got to take that risk when you take that first hire on, haven't you? You've got to take that risk that there's not going to be as much work. You've got to have faith in everything that we spoke about on all of the episodes, the marketing, the systems, the automations. But ultimately, you've got to do it, haven't you? You've got to go, okay, I need 2 buckets now, because I can never catch 2 buckets of water if I've only got 1. And I see so many people get stuck there. So they get their pricing right, but then they get scared and they won't push on. You know, they won't push to that next level. I guess that's a mindset issue, isn't it? So I think ultimately you've got to shift that mindset and be willing. You've got to be willing to fail, haven't you? You know, to go forward. Otherwise, you're just going to stay still.
Yeah, this is that. Back to that. Most of the lads that we work with and speak to, they are tradesmen working towards being business owners. Yeah. So that element of risk doesn't always come naturally to them. And I agree, it usually comes from mindset. A lot of the time, lads are in the trades because they didn't quite get the results in school they wanted. Maybe if you want to backtrack all the way back to then, and some of the mindset can be stuck in place from that. You know, I've explained before that the way things are going now with supply and demand, you can charge just as much as a solicitor doing this per hour, because there's less guys in the industry, there's more people, there's more houses, there's less and less guys coming into the industry. And yeah, it's just the only thing stopping you is mindset and taking the next guy on. You know, there's plenty of good engineers out there who just want to be good engineers. But I think there's a lot of guys who are accidentally self-employed. And they're really good conversations to have. And again, if you pay a good, strong wage and you find a guy who values the security and the stability, then they're going to be the guy for you to take on. And because again, we've said before, most guys who are self-employed would make more money being employed. yes, you would give up some freedom, admittedly, but you're going to exchange that freedom for security and future-proofing things. So, guys who are a little bit older, who maybe don't have a pot or have a pension, then again, and they're just fed up with being self-employed, they're the guys that will be a good conversation to have if you're wanting to scale, because there can be a win-win scenario with that. But yeah, the mindset thing, the lack of willingness to take risk, if you've got young kids and things like that, it can be a bit scary. But again, if you get your numbers dialed in, you look at the pricing calculator, you'll quickly realize that with 2 buckets, the cost of that second bucket is usually only a quarter to a third of the bucket. A strange analogy, bear with me. A quarter to a third of the bucket. Once you've filled it past that, then it becomes profit. And again,
then it's the stepping stones become closer, don't they? You can then, when you want to take on that next person and the next person, it's all much more manageable. It's that first one, isn't it? That seems to be where so many people take someone on at the wrong pricing, the wrong structure, the wrong systems, so it fucks up. They then are burnt and they're scarred from that. So their mindset is defense mode. They don't want to do it, but ultimately it's because they did it wrong that time. So if you can do it right, then the next one slots in, doesn't it? It starts to be uniform because of everything, everything we spoke about up till now on the podcast, isn't it? It's all layers of that journey.
Becomes more financially viable as well when you take more on. I'm not saying take on 20 lads, but number one is going to be the hardest. It's going to be easier for number 2, and so on and so forth. Not just with the mindset of it, but also with each, because again, if your pricing's right, like we've spoke about, each guy that you take on contributes to the business costs, as long as your pricing's right. And each guy you take on after that first guy there's less revenue needs to be generated per engineer, because the cost, those baseline costs that you're going to have, if you take on, let's use the example, you've got some software in place and you've got a girl working in the office. Those costs are set standardized costs, whether it's you on your own or you've got 2, 3, 4 guys. But those costs aren't likely to change
drastically. They might like iterate a bit, but they're going to stay pretty stable for that first few engineers, aren't they?
If you can run 2 or 3 engineers from one admin person, depending on the type of business you've got. So those change. So then you might have another little bit of a adjustment in the blip on the graph. You take on guy number 4, you're going to need to take on another person in the office. But again, there'll be a sweet spot for your business in your area, depending on what you do, and it might be 3 lads, 2 lads, 6 lads, and that you won't know what that is until you try.
Yeah. Ultimately, you've got to get in the ring to have the fight, and you can't keep watching from the sidelines if you genuinely want to push on. You have to put the gloves on and get in.
Too easy to stay safe, isn't it? As well, a lot of guys, it's the discomfort, and the safe where they're at. They're making an okay wage. They say, it's better than having a job because I've got a little bit of flexibility and freedom. But a lot of the conversations we have is the lads are maybe a little bit older, and they start to think about, what am I going to do when I decide to pull the plug? I don't have anything in place. Because I'm going week to week kind of thing, hand to mouth. And a lot of the time, the solution is another couple of members of staff.
Yeah, definitely. Right. On that note, anyone got any questions? Anyone got any thoughts on that? You can get in touch with us whenever you want. You can email myself at wayne@offthetools.co.uk or email Andy at andy@offthetools.co.uk. It'll be great to hear some of the feedback from you guys. Obviously, you can get us on social media as well, so feel free to join the Off the Tools group or the Plum Chat group and get involved. Any closing words for you, Andy, on this session?
Just don't look at it from the light of you've had mates who've been burned, or you know what I mean. You've looked at your numbers and you think there's no way I can take someone on. There is ways and means, and almost every single lad within Off the Tools Alliance is moving towards or already taken on staff, because they very quickly realise once they get everything else sorted, that is the right way to grow and scale and to create the life that they want. So don't look at it. Try and look at it from more of an open mind of, actually, I have built a good little business so far. The next steps will be to take someone on, but there'll be some things that I need to get dialed in first. And if you've got any questions around that, like you say, just reach out to one of us. We can have a chat and give you the next steps, really.
Cool. Right. See you on the next one.
Let's go.